he was the one person that recognized A, the threat. He understood that this is not something that can wait. B, it's going to take all of his strength and will. He can't go in there and go, here, kitty, kitty, and hope that that cougar suddenly brings his energy down level down to TR's. TR was like, nope, I'm meeting force with force, dude. And didn't hesitate. There was no hesitation. That level of boldness is required as leaders to be able to jump into the fray with your metaphorical wild beast. Whatever the thing is you are wrestling with, grappling with, or that is attacking your resources, you have to have the courage, the vision, and the conviction to be able to jump in on that threat, attack it, dispatch it, and move on to accomplish the mission. What's up, my friends? JT DeBolt with you today for the True Driven Podcast, the podcast for the few, the true, the driven. Those of us who have aligned and united to become the True Driven, and I say good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, whatever time it is for you, no matter where you might be tuning in from on the Big Blue Marble. Thanks as always for joining me here on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and of course YouTube, youtube.com/JT DeBolt. That is your home for the True Driven information, the True Driven community. Make sure you jump in there, hit that subscribe button, stay in the know to be the first to know when I drop new content and bring that to you each and every single week. I'm going to revisit something I was inspired by the other day, a concept we talk quite a bit about here in the True Driven community, and something that you True Drivens know inside the program is a major cornerstone of what we talk about what it takes to be an excellent leader and to develop that personal excellence for yourself. Before I jump into what it is, I want to give you the kind of backstory. So I was looking through and I saw this post about Teddy Roosevelt. And they were talking about how back in January of 1901, Teddy Roosevelt was on a hunting expedition, and he was with a couple of buddies and their hunting dogs. And they were out in the woods, in the mountains, and they came across a wild cougar. This cougar was a big animal. And the dogs basically went crazy, went after the cougar. The cougar looked like it was going to be aggressive anyway. So the dogs jump in there, either out of instinct to protect the men or just by being dogs, right? Hunting dogs. Well, of course, the cougar, being a much bigger, much more powerful animal, starts to basically tear these dogs apart. And the men are like, what are we going to do? And they all freak out. They basically froze, except Teddy Roosevelt. Teddy jumps in, grabs his knife because he realized if he shoots his rifle, he might hit one of the dogs. He doesn't want to hit the dog. He takes a hunting knife, attacks the cougar, stabs it in the throat, kills the cougar, and basically saves the day. What caused this to happen? What caused it to happen was there was basically this unflinching sense of purpose that Teddy Roosevelt used. And it's something that true driven leaders have to have in business and life on a daily basis. So there's a couple of ways to look at this. And I remember the post was talking about fearlessness and recklessness and boldness. Basically the three things of, the way you could mix this story up and kind of see it. Was it fearlessness? Was it recklessness? Was it boldness? Well, as you might well expect, this post was talking about Teddy Roosevelt in the positive light, which is a good thing because he's an awesome leader and an excellent example of what leadership, true courageous leadership looks like, what we as True Drivens can aspire to inculcate into our business and our life on a daily basis. If you're an entrepreneur, you have to have an element of this. And so often when I talk to entrepreneurs, whether speaking from stage or leading them and training them, one thing that comes up oftentimes is this concept of wanting to be fearless. Now, I've talked about fearlessness in previous episodes, but I want to talk to you specifically today about what fearlessness, the real kind of, I think, challenge behind that is, the misconception of it is, and how pursuing it is basically like chasing a rainbow. You're never going to catch it. Great cardio workout, but you're never catching it. Fearlessness is not actually possible for human beings, save for a very, 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 very small cross-section of society. Fearlessness is in the truest sense, if you're talking about truly having no fear, is not actually capable. We have this thing, our limbic brain, if you think of it as the amygdala in the back of your brain, that basically hasn't evolved since we started standing upright on two feet. Way back when we were living in caves and hunting saber-toothed tigers or running from them, we needed fear in order to keep us alive. There were actual physical threats in the known world that on any given moment of any given day could end you. So the amygdala was necessary because it primed you and kept you in a fear-based state so that you would stay alive. But if you fast forward a few hundred or a few thousand years to where we are now, and you start to look at our society that we have here and today, we don't really have a lot of physical threats. Most of our needs are taken care of. Most of us live in an air-conditioned building. And by air-conditioned, I mean either cooled or warmed. We're not living where the elements could literally kill us. Not so much when we lived back in those days in the caves. There was a constant fight for survival. So that need for that part of the brain was extremely important. Now, it doesn't help us as much. Now, you still want to have an element to that so that it keeps you safe from, there are actual threats in the world that you still have to pay attention to. They're just not as prevalent. So we still have that. Now, as I said before and kind of alluded to, there is a very, very small cross-section of people who literally have a medical condition that prevents them from actually feeling or rationalizing fear. They don't really have an association with fear. And you might think, wow, that'd be awesome, especially if you're an entrepreneur. How cool would it be to have zero fear? What would you do if you had zero fear? You'd close every sale, or at least you wouldn't have the fear of rejection, so you'd go after more. You'd land more big contracts. You'd land more big deals. You'd launch more initiatives. You'd build new products. You'd break out into the marketplace bigger, bolder, right? You do all these things because you don't have that fear. The problem is that it would be extremely dangerous if you didn't have that. And what I'm talking about is this type of person will not even look both ways before they walk out into traffic because it doesn't occur to them that they could get killed. They don't have a sense of self-preservation, literally because there's no sense of fear of death. If you said, hey, let's go skydiving, they'd be like, okay, but it wouldn't be from a place of joyful excitement or even a little tinge of fear going, man, I could die doing this. They'd just be like, okay, you just want me to jump out of the airplane? Yes. But take this parachute first. You know what I mean? Like there's just the elevator's not going to the penthouse with them in relation to fear. And so do you really want to have that kind of experience? I don't think you do, because it would not take long for the average person to put themselves into a very dangerous situation, whether you're driving a car or evading them in a parking lot. You kind of need that part of your brain that tells you that there is danger and that you can associate danger with death or injury. Therefore, that fear mechanism is kind of important. So to be fearless is not reasonable for most of society. 99.999. I don't know what the actual percentage of people who have that condition where they don't feel fear or associate with fear. I don't know how big that group is. I'm just saying the vast majority of us, it's just not a reasonable thing to think you're going to be fearless. On the other side, being reckless is kind of one of those things where you can disassociate from the consequences of what you're doing. And I think a lot of times when you hear that story about Teddy Roosevelt jumping into the fray with this gigantic cat with basic razors for claws and teeth, getting after it in a full-thrown primal rage, and then he jumps in there and dispatches it with a knife, you might think, well, that's pretty reckless. But what was crazy about it was he wasn't really that riled up about it afterwards or even beforehand. He just knew what he had to do. And that's the lesson that I think as entrepreneurs and as leaders, we have to be very clear on. Something that's interesting about being reckless as opposed to being fearless is fearlessness is, it's like I said, it's just not practical. So then we would more tend to be reckless, where that's where we're trying to cancel out this concept that there's consequence to a dangerous or possibly, irresponsible action. You just sort of do shit because you think that's cool or smart. You see this a lot. Young kids, young dudes act like this. They act like jackasses when they're drag racing their cars. I'm not saying I ever did that. I'm just saying recklessness tends to happen before we learn the pain of consequences. And as an entrepreneur, you have a lot on the path. You have a lot on the plate that you can't afford to fuck up. So that's where recklessness is really not going to be to your benefit as well. As leaders, you have people that are answering to you, people that are counting on you to show up and accomplish the mission or help them accomplish the mission. Being reckless about it not only is not effective, but it's also a terrible example to set, because then they think, oh, I have to live up to that standard. Is that really a standard that you want for your team? Probably not. Now, am I saying there's anything wrong with, high stakes behaviors? Maybe you love to skydive. Maybe you love to ride motocross. Maybe you love to rock climb. Not at all. I think those things are awesome, but there's still an element of that, while risky, that is controlled risk, calculated risk. You don't just jump out of an airplane without a parachute. You know full well, not only that you have a parachute on, but how to operate the parachute. There's a big difference between taking that risk and just being like, fuck it, and jumping out of an airplane. The same can be said for entrepreneurship. A lot of times you've gone through training, or you at least have a mission and a vision plan for how you're going to get through this thing and how you're going to take on the next task, hit that next target so you can accomplish the big mission. That is not being reckless. That's actually being very well thought out, strategic about your approach, while the outside world who is not entrepreneurial may say, holy fucking shit, you're crazy. You've got a lot on the line. You're taking a lot of risks. But to entrepreneurs and to true drivens, we're like, yeah, dude, that's how we live. It's a calculated risk. That's not being reckless. But what does it take? And I think Teddy Roosevelt taught us a great lesson with his boldness. So let's talk about boldness for a second. What is boldness? I like to think of boldness as having clarity plus conviction. You've heard me talk about this before. Clarity plus conviction is another way of defining courage. So what's the difference between courage and boldness? I actually think that they are so synonymous that you can choose and use either one of them kind of interchangeably, especially in leadership, especially in entrepreneurship. Boldness, basically, the courage may be the thing that gets you moving. You may be sitting in a place of abject fear where you're interfacing with the reality of the possible consequences of failure, the possible consequences of this thing collapsing. And it may literally feel like you could die if this thing doesn't work out. If it means that much to you as an entrepreneur, you've likely felt where the whole weight of the world is on your shoulders. And it takes courage to be able to get out of that state. So your first action may not be very bold. Your first action, under the guise of fear, or of courage rather, may be just to break the inertia of fear. And that's what it takes. That's what courage can do for you. That's the power of courage. So it's not always about being bold. Sometimes courage is just that initiator. It's that catalyst that gets the thing going. Boldness is a whole nother way of behaving. Boldness has a level of conviction. It has, quite frankly, a level of fuck you to it. There's an element where you smile in the face of the fear. Now, I'm not talking about arrogance, and I'm not talking about ego so much. Maybe there's a little bit of ego there, and that's okay. Healthy ego. I don't truly believe ego is the enemy. I think uncontrolled ego could be a problem. But I do think that if you really look at the boldness that Teddy Roosevelt displayed in that act of attacking, basically jumping into the fray with this wild animal to save his dogs and therefore keep his fellow hunters safe, he was the one person that recognized A, the threat. He understood that this is not something that can wait. B, it's going to take all of his strength and will. He can't go in there and go, here, kitty, kitty, and hope that cougar suddenly brings his energy down level down to TR's. TR was like, nope, I'm meeting force with force, dude. And didn't hesitate. There was no hesitation. That level of boldness is required as leaders to be able to jump into the fray with your metaphorical wild beast. Whatever the thing is you are wrestling with, grappling with, or that is attacking your resources, you have to have the courage, the vision, and the conviction to be able to jump in on that threat, attack it, dispatch it, and move on to accomplish the mission. That's what TR did. That's one of the most important lessons that we can learn from this, is you got to realize that it's not all about thinking through this thing. It's about being able to be on purpose. So when I talk about the big four: values, vision, mission, and a sense of purpose, that's what we're talking about. And TR exemplify that. Teddy Roosevelt would have been an awesome true driven. Like, honestly, he was a true driven, like a precursor to it. Think about it. How cool would it have been to have Teddy Roosevelt in our group, right? He would have fit in perfectly. I would love to have him on the podcast and interview him, because I guarantee you there would have been an element of this where we could have said, hey, there's not about fearlessness. He wasn't fearless. He's very, very aware of the threat, very aware of the potential consequences. Was he reckless? Did he say, fuck it, I don't care about that stuff? I don't believe he did. And especially, the guys that were with him are like, this dude knew exactly what he was doing. There was no hesitation. He went straight in. It wasn't just some wild thing. Recklessness would have probably been him just hacking away. Instead, he went straight for the throat and took the thing out in one jab. That's pretty badass. Maybe 2 to 3. But he wasn't all over the place, stabbing it all over its body. He didn't come out scratched, gouged, and injured. It was a pretty quick fight. That is not recklessness. That's boldness. That's being very clear on what needs to get done, understanding the threat, and getting after it with precision. As entrepreneurs, we can learn a lot from this. As leaders, we have to learn a lot from this. We have to be willing to go, what are the threats to ourselves, to our mission, to the people we're leading? What do we need to do boldly, with precision, and with intention to ensure that those things do not become a problem or take us off our path? Those are going to be key and essential. And I would encourage you as a leader to think about that. Are there things right now in your business, things right now, maybe on the mission that you're on, whether you're fitness, financial, family, whatever mission, or maybe there's several missions that you might consider yourself on. What are the potential threats that could take you off the path to accomplishing those? You got to have the boldness to be able to attack it, just like Teddy Roosevelt attacked this cougar, and take it out without too much damage or injury to yourself or the people you're there to protect. Teddy was protecting his dogs and his fellow hunters. He didn't give much thought to his own well-being, although I guarantee you he wasn't there to die. It wasn't a suicide mission like a reckless person would be. It was there to survive because he knew he had a bigger plan in life than just this one day. He needed to survive the day so he can continue on with the bigger missions that he had as the president of the United States. There's another element to this. I've talked about this before. You guys followed me long enough. You've heard me say my personal mantra: don't be perfect, just be awesome. There was never a part of Teddy Roosevelt's behavior in this act where he had to overthink how to do this. And I cannot tell you how many fucking times when I talk to entrepreneurs, they talk about their business, they talk about what they want to achieve, they talk about all these things, and I'll ask, okay, so what's preventing you? What has stopped you from getting where you want to be and accomplishing and attaining and achieving the things that you want? We can always boil it down to typically overthinking. They're trying to be perfect. This is so much that I feel like we should have an episode on this. Maybe on perfectionism. Wouldn't that be great? Because perfectionism is a wound. There is something deep inside you telling you that if you're not perfect, you're somehow going to get punished for it. It's some sort of a past trauma that you're carrying forward. Something telling you that you cannot make any mistakes. I can't afford to make any mistakes. Bullshit. You have to make mistakes. You have to basically go through some failures, if you want to call them that. Now, I have said this before. Yes, you're going to lose, but losing does not make you a loser. And you may fail, but ultimately you are not a failure unless one of two things happens. Either you don't get started in the first place or you quit. That's the only way to really truly be a failure. So you might get your ass kicked. You might need a hot minute to pause, reflect, lick your wounds before you get back in the mat. But at the end of the day, sitting back and, allowing yourself to ruminate too much on the failure, on the mistake, on the setback is only prolonging the reality of that pain. How much longer do you need to go through that? And to think you've got to be perfect in order to relaunch or to launch in the first place is not high performance behavior. Perfectionism is a very low performance behavior. Well, I'm a perfectionist, they say boldly and proudly. Guess what? You're a coward is what you are. If you think being perfect is the answer, that's a cowardly fucking behavior, because you're basically saying, I am not courageous enough. I am not bold enough to take a risk on myself. I am not courageous enough. I am not bold enough to put my ass on the line because I don't recognize what it's worth, that I'm worth taking the risk on. I'll place a bet on my favorite team or my favorite player or my favorite this, but heaven forbid, fuck that. I'm not doing that for myself. Come on, man. Have the fucking courage to break away from the cowardly behavior of perfectionism once and for all. Don't be perfect, just be awesome. Now, for this to work, for you to actually follow through on the don't be perfect, just be awesome, is you got to be very clear on your vision and have a sense of mission to it. Create a mission out of it. And yes, I constantly harp on the big four because, guys, it is foundational. I'm going to repeat it until the day I fucking die because it's that important. You guys need to understand that if you haven't yet gotten clear on what your values are, what that vision is, and build a vision for yourself, what your mission is, that finite start and end date to your mission, and then have a sense of purpose to it, guess what? It's very hard to play that bold game the way TR did. Teddy Roosevelt clearly had a sense of vision and a sense of mission. It wasn't that he woke up that morning looking to get into a fight with a wild animal. That's not it. But he recognized that there was something, a threat in the way of accomplishing the mission. They were there to have a good day of hunting. Well, guess what? If your hunting dogs are wiped out and then your dudes get wiped out by this animal, you ain't accomplishing the mission. So he didn't think, he reacted, and he showed up and did what he knew he had to do to take care of that threat. Nobody else was there for him. He's not going to wait and just think through this shit, right? He wasn't trying to come up with a perfect plan because he knew what his vision was. He had a sense of mission behind it. I'm going to fucking take this animal out so we can get back on track. Now, I don't know if that's really what he was thinking or what he was saying, but that's definitely how he behaved. I think we can all agree with that. And the most important part about that is that there's no sense as a leader where you ever have to question if something is too big or too dangerous or whatever it is for your business or for your group or for the people you're leading. If you're an entrepreneur, you may say, hey, man, I'm not willing to put that investment in there, or I'm definitely putting the investment in there, but man, it sure seems like a huge risk. It's your proverbial cougar or wild animal that you have to wrestle with a knife, not with a sniper rifle. So there's going to be a part of that where that boldness comes through, but only because you've built that big vision for yourself, for your business. You've built that broad vision for yourself, for your life. You've attached it to a sense of mission, and so it's not going to stop you. That's actually where the boldness comes from. That's where the boldness is actually generated. It's not bravado. It's not machismo. It's not some bullshit fucking mantra that you tell yourself in the mirror. I'm awesome. I'm great. I'm strong. Those things are awesome. If you want to do that, great. If you love affirmations, get some. But I'm telling you, the actual true sense of courage, the true sense of conviction happens when you're clear, when you have clarity on the vision that you have for your business and your life, and you have a sense of mission behind it. That's actually what generates it. So when somebody gets in the way and they become one of those naysaying trolls and they start talking shit to you, it doesn't even slow you down. You actually smile and laugh at it. You go, fucking thank you for the extra attention. Motherfucker, I'm going to roll you over. When a setback happens, instead of collapsing under the pain of disappointment or the crushing feeling of defeat, you may experience those emotions, but only temporarily. True drivens and high performers know that that is part of the plan. That is part of the recipe. It's going to happen. You will face disappointment. You will face defeat. You will face a setback. But the difference is knowing that it's part of the recipe and actually seeking out the ability and seeing the actual gratitude, the value in being able to face that adversity. A life without, and absolutely the pursuit of building a business without adversity is a joke. It is a fucking myth. Don't listen to some asshole that's sprinkling fairy dust on you to tell you that that's how life is, because that's not how life is. True drivens, you know this. Adversity is around every single corner. Embrace it. When you have a sense of vision and a sense of mission to your business and to your life, you actually can't help but see adversity as a blessing The old saying, pressure is a privilege, comes to play. The final thing I want to say about this is one of my favorite quotes comes from Basil King. Be bold and mighty forces will come to your aid. I usually close most of my keynote speeches out with that particular saying, that quote. I love it so much because it speaks to the true spirit of the true driven. Beside my own quote of don't be perfect, just be awesome, be bold and mighty forces will come to your aid is 100% written for the true driven community. How come? Number one, when you're bold, you tend to take bigger steps. You tend to take bigger actions. You tend to have, again, created a bigger vision for yourself and have applied a sense of mission to it. You've actually created a true nuts to bolt, soup to nuts mission where you've defined it, blueprinted it out. You've got a start and end date to it. You know exactly, verifiably, externally verifiable when you accomplish the mission and how, what that's going to look like. That can't help you but be bold. And what's crazy about that is other high performers, other true drivens will see you and align with you because you just stand out. The rest of the world thinks you're crazy. The rest of the world thinks you're reckless. The rest of the world actually sees you and admires you maybe and thinks you're fearless, but you know better than that. Teddy Roosevelt wasn't after the Snapchat or the Instagram fame because they didn't have it back then, but he didn't think like that. He thought like a leader. He knew what needed to be done. He was bold and he jumped into it. Now, did mighty forces come to his aid? No. I mean, maybe we can argue he had a guardian angel. God was looking at whatever you believe in. There's that possibly could happen. And that quote, be bold and mighty forces will come to your aid, potentially lends to that. Absolutely. But when I talk about mighty forces coming to your aid, I'm not talking about some magic energy that just surrounds you like a force field and protects you from injury or defeat. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm saying is that you will always find out a way. Maybe not in the moment, but invariably it will work out for you because of that nature, that energy that you put forth of being bold. You're going to surround yourself with other bold people that want to kick ass, take names, and play the game big, but play the game to win. They naturally will see you and want to align with you. But JT, won't they want to compete with me? Let's hope they do. Fuck yeah. Competition is a good thing. I don't even have to explain this to the true drivens, but if you're new around here, you might think competition's a bad thing, especially because in today's society, we've been fed this line of bullshit that competition is somehow ugly or bad. If I compete and win, then I'm taking away from you and you don't get as much. Bullshit. Competition, if you even understand the word, comes from the Latin word competere, which means to rise together. So if you're kicking ass, and you're my competition, it's going to inspire me to up-level my game. And I'm going to start kicking ass. And you're going to go, fuck this guy. He's coming up on my tail. And you're going to rise. And then I'm going to try to meet you at this new level. We're going to keep doing this. And we're going to keep growing. And that personal excellence expands. And because I'm pushing myself and you're pushing yourself, the people that we lead are going to be inspired. And they're going to want to increase their level of excellence, their level of performance. And that's going to inspire the people around them. They're going to go home with a pep in their step. They're going to go home with a sense of pride. They're going to go home with a straighter back, taller posture. They're going to go home with a fatter paycheck. But more importantly, they're going to show up with a sense of purpose by being bold. Not by being meek, by being bold. Not by being scared, by being bold. Having that sense of conviction and that sense of courage and that sense that they have a place in this world to lead and be the best they can. Last episode, I was talking about this. Some people, you might be one of them, are feeling that maybe they're not qualified to lead. Maybe they need more training. Maybe they need more experience. And listen, we can all use more training and more experience. We can always afford to sharpen the blade. There's always room for that. But the most important aspect that will help you grow any skill set, especially the skill set of leadership, is experience, putting in the reps, doing the thing. And sometimes it's not just about showing up and kind of getting away with it. We're talking about fucking playing the game full out, playing the game to win. That takes boldness. It's that next level. It's that next piece of energy, that next little shot glass of courage that you might need. You might have the courage to get up off the couch and break the inertia of fear. But what if, instead of just kind of shaking yourself off, you actually showed up with a fuck yeah, let's go get some, make direct eye contact with excellence and say, motherfucker, I'm coming for you. What if you did that? How would things change? What if you perceived yourself as capable of doing that kind of thing? You saw yourself as that prize fighter, willing to get in the ring with adversity, with challenge, with excellence, and come out on top. That's what it takes. The ability to see yourself in that light, carry through with that energy. Be bold, and mighty forces will come to your aid. Not magic forces, not mystical forces, the forces within you. And you will inspire the other true drivens, the other high performers around you, because they're going to want to be a part of that. They may actually come to your aid. They may go shoulder to shoulder with you. They may be the person that holds the torch and lights the way. They may be the person that holds the towel and wipes the blood off your face. Either way, you will never be alone because you are bold. Fewer and far between are the bold, but they're there. And when they see you behaving that way, they will align with you. And really, that's the whole point of the True Driven movement. That's what I'm here for, is to help create that situation for you, for myself, for everybody else who aligns with and has identified and united to become those true driven. That's the whole point. That's the vision, and of course, the mission as well. Today and every single day, let's take this lesson from Teddy Roosevelt. He jumped into the fray with a vicious wild animal, something powerful, something deadly. And he didn't slap it around. He didn't ask permission. He didn't ask it nicely. He took its life. He took it out of the equation. And in so doing, saved the lives of his hunting dogs and his hunting buddies. But more importantly, he taught a lesson that all true drivens can learn from. And that is this: when you are bold, you surpass this hypothetical notion of fearlessness. You overshadow the silliness of recklessness. What you actually do is pave the way with courage, with conviction, and show that boldness is a true characteristic of leadership, something that you exemplify, something you live, an example that you are demonstrating, and something that someone else can follow and benefit from in so doing. And that's what your job is. That's what your responsibility is. That's my challenge to you today and every single day. So let's get after it. All right, my friends, it's a real pleasure and privilege to come at you. If you got some value from this, share this message far and wide. Hit that subscribe button so you can stay in the know and be the first to know when I bring you new content here. And remember, no matter what course you fly in life, fly high, fly fast, and fly far, stay driven.